Hello, hello, hello! Hi. Oh my god, thank you so much for coming. I am so thrilled. I did not expect this many people to be here, so thank you so much.
Okay.
And
You're going to introduce it, I'll introduce you.
Yeah, sure.
How's that sound?
yeah, sure, yeah.
So welcome all of you. Thank you so much for being here. I'm delighted to introduce Becky Moon. She's a sophomore from Seoul, South Korea, double majoring in studio art and philosophy. Her studio practice aspires to bring the two worlds, art and philosophy, together. She's also the co-president of Hearts for Arts, a student-run Washington University organization for creating artworks with and for the patients at St. Louis Children's Hospital, which is a wonderful organization. Thank you so much for doing that. And the particular series that we're seeing today draws from the philosopher Soren Kierkegaard, whose works include, for example, Fear and Trembling and The Sickness Unto Death. Spoiler alert, it's life. And, for example, his re-envisioning of the story of Abraham and Isaac and the notion of the night of faith and the night of resignation in the context of that story. And so we're so delighted to have this melding of art and philosophy today. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you, Becky.
Thank you. Well, thank you so much. And again, thank you all for coming here. Before I start my talk, I would like to give thanks to some special people who helped me put this together. Of course, Professor Becko Copenhaver, whose name is a cooler version of mine, who is the Director of Undergraduate Studies in Philosophy, for providing this wonderful opening that marks the very first Washington University Department of Philosophy art show. Professor Jason Gardner of the Philosophy Department for introducing me to the world of Kierkegaard through his existentialism class. Professor Jamie Adams, Chloe West, and Audra Hubble of Sandbox for giving me artistic guidance for the production. And of course, my friends for helping me set up the show and listening to me talk about Kierkegaard non-stop for 2 months. You guys deserve a degree in philosophy at this point. I'm sorry for doing that. And there's someone who is not here with us right now, but I would like to give her I'd like to give her special thanks. It's Professor Zoe Jenkin of the Philosophy Department. Her class, Art and the Mind Brain, which all of you should take, and Existentialism too, all of you should take, was honestly an eye-opener and a shift in perspective on how I view art. And I have a much better understanding of my role as an artist thanks to her class. And her philosophical guidance and kindness has allowed me to put this together. And lastly, I would like to introduce my dad, Mr. Hung Soo Moon. Yesterday to attend this opening. He's a lawyer, but more importantly, a published legal and theological philosopher who wrote best-selling books titled Justice and Constitution, The Hymn of Humility, and Free Will and Determinism. So if you have philosophical questions, he's the person to ask. And well, thanks to him, I grew up in an extremely philosophical environment. There has not been a single dinner where we did not contemplate on the meaning of human existence. So thank you so much for making me the artist. Oh my god! You can't make me cry right now. This is not a good place to cry. Okay, and again, thank you so much for coming. So the presentation is like 10 minutes, super quick, so please bear with me. And I'd like to begin by talking about how I started to create artworks on philosophy. Before coming to WashU, I was neither an artist nor a philosopher, but I was actually deeply involved in political activism. When I was a sophomore in high school, I wrote a petition about protecting South Korean women from female-specific violence, which got 60,000 signatures and played a big role in creating a law. But at one point, while furiously and arduously engaging myself in lawmaking, I came to the realization that people aren't going to stop murdering just because there's a law saying do not murder. So there has to be something more. There has to be something more powerful. Then how can we bring change to the world? Well, we can bring change by hard power like law, and we can also bring change by soft power. And in my opinion, the strongest soft powers that are out there are philosophy and art. Philosophy, to me, is a problem solver. Every question that we have in our lives can be divided into 2 categories. The first type has an obvious answer. It can be approached through science. However, the other type does not have an obvious answer. There is no right or wrong, and there may not even be an answer. But I believe that we can direct ourselves into finding the most logical answer through philosophy. And we can even learn more about what the questions really mean, and even find out what we want from solving those questions. But how are we even going to dip our toes into philosophy when philosophy covers look like this? This is my finding after going to the philosophy section of the Women Library. Well, if they tried really hard, there are colors. And if they tried really, really hard, there are funny shades. So, and I think this is where the power of art kicks in. I'm a huge fan of the phrase, "A picture speaks 1,000 words." Art is a visual representation of the world that lies beyond the world we perceive. In other words, art reveals the unseen and puts the formless into form. And it makes us feel things. This is a quote that I encountered at the very first class of Art and the Mind Brain with Professor Jenkins, and it changed me. Art gives a unique aesthetic experience that can make us cry, laugh, tremble, and feel emotions and sensations that we have never felt before. And therefore, I started to make art about philosophy. This is an animation I made about errands. These are some theories on Hume. And these are the free will and determinism posters that are out there. So, about the show, why Kierkegaard out of so many influential philosophers? Kierkegaard is a Danish, never mind. Okay, so just general facts about the show. The preparation took 47 days from making the artworks to setting up. And the show features 6 paintings, 8 sketches, and 1 interactive piece where you get to draw your own eternal self. So, who is Soren Kierkegaard? Why Kierkegaard? He is a Danish philosopher born in 1813, and he had a very short and tragic life, encountering many deaths of his family. But he played a revolutionary role in philosophy by bringing it into the individual level. Before Kierkegaard, philosophy revolved around universal accounts, or what we should pursue as humanity. But Kierkegaard brought the scale of philosophy down to the individual level. He changed the statement from we to I, which is extremely revolutionary, and why we call him the beginner of existentialism, which is a branch of philosophy investigating on what it means to exist. Therefore, many of his writings are on highly personal topics such as ways of living, definition of love, life after death, and the way of responsibility, and even personal relationships with God. And I found his writings highly applicable to real life. I would go like, wait a minute, if I do this, Kierkegaard will not be happy. So that was the state I've been living in for the past few months. And the inspiration of my pieces out there primarily come from 3 texts, Either Or, Fear and Trembling, and The Sixth Descent to Death. And I'll give a brief explanation about the pieces. So this is called Faith and Despair. Kierkegaard acknowledges that it is not easy to be a human being. We are prone to fall into despair because the weight of existence is, as you know, very heavy. And he says that there are 5 types of despair, which I have visualized into characters. But thankfully, he suggests us a solution, which is faith to the divine. Through faith, we can have an eternal self, which can scoop us from the deep ocean of despair into eternity. And moving on, Kierkegaard also wrote a lot about eternity. And I found this concept especially remarkable because we rarely think about eternity, or even the possibility of having an eternal life, because we are so caught up with the lives we are having right now. But Kierkegaard believes that we all have a potential to achieve an eternal self, and those are my visual interpretations of his texts. One metaphor that he uses is the metaphor of the night to explain eternity. Kierkegaard says that when we have an unattainable goal, we are taken into a realm of infinity because we will never achieve it. So if your crush never likes you back, don't worry, you are in the infinite level, so yay. And he uses this metaphor of a knight who falls in love with a princess who is already in love with a prince. Very sad, I know. So the knight will never be with the princess, which makes him resign his love eternally. However, he turns into the knight of infinite resignation. But here's not the end. When the knight starts to believe that in another world, through the power of the divine, his love will come true. Then he turns into the knight of faith. Well, Kierkegaard used the metaphor of a love story, but this can be applied to many more things. We all aspire on an unobtainable goal. Some may aspire world peace. Some may aspire other goals that are unobtainable. And the whole creation process of this artwork is also a metaphor. I tried to create the perfect work, which is obviously unobtainable, which is why I covered up the old work and tried to find the pristine form of art. I have obviously not succeeded because there is no such thing as perfect art, but I have once been a knight of infinite resignation to make the perfect piece. And Professor Adams told me that in his 19 years of teaching, he has never seen anyone cover up their old work, so funny. And yeah, there are lots of details, and I even wrote a poem from the perspective of the knight to the princess. So if you shed a tear, let me know. And this is the piece in the poster. Kierkegaard suggests 3 types of lives based on where you direct your focus to. The aesthete chases after pleasure, the judge chases after ethics, and the man of faith chases after God. And finally, here's a portrait of Kierkegaard. He uses lots of visual metaphors, and especially metaphors of advancing. And he mentions that in order to achieve infinity, you have to make a leap of faith. So I tried to visualize that in the portrait. And here are some sketches based on his other philosophical thoughts. And I think now is a good time for a few questions.
Thank you so much for this. My name's Jordan. I'm a grad student here in the PhD program. This is really awesome. And yeah, just the idea that this is our first art show. Thanks for helping us do this. Do you want to talk about, or would you like to say what faith as an existentialist kind of means to you?
Oh my God, that's a grad student level question. I need 11 years more of schooling, but
okay, I'll ask you later.
But I can just say that.
Yeah, please.
Well, I was really moved by Kierkegaard's definition of faith because he believes that faith is blind. Is that right, Professor Gardner?
Sure.
Okay. And I don't know, so I was especially drawn to Kierkegaard because so many times in my life, I had to just blindly rely on something that I don't even know if it exists or not. So it came to me on a really personal level, and therefore I believe that faith is blind because you never know.
Yeah. Cool. Thank you.
You're welcome. Hello.
Hi. I was just wondering, it was really incredible in your talk what you were saying about how what you've learned and what you've decided that you want to do going forward over the past few months about the intersection of philosophy and art and stuff. And what do you what are next steps for you? What do you have any other projects?
Oh my God! Well, for my personal short-term goals, I would love to have an art show at the American Philosophical Association in the coming years. So that's my short-term goal, and therefore I will be creating more philosophy works over the next few months, and you will have to hear more about other philosophers. So I'm gonna say sorry in advance. And and I was going to announce it, but since you brought that up, there is another show coming up. Okay, and this time it's by the Artists Alliance for Philosophy, which are a group of Sandbox students who have passion for art and philosophy. And raise your hand if you guys are doing it. Yeah, come on. And we're going to have a portrait show about female philosophers. It's going to be titled Women in Philosophy, Power and Prominence. And it'll be featuring works from my beautiful, amazing, talented studio mates. And these are their sample works. Aren't they gorgeous? So please stay tuned for next semester. And I'll go back to questions. I'll receive one more question and I'll say general things. Hello, Professor Beale. Oh my God. Well, to give an introduction, Professor Beale, did I say your name
That's right, yes.
Is a Kierkegaardian scholar who came all the way from St. Louis University for the show. So.
All the way. So you mentioned 3 works, Either Or, Fear and Trembling, and The Sickness Unto Death. And they're all very complex works, as you're well aware. in either or, which is really complex because there's all these different
Yeah.
voices and characters talking to each other, and it's. But one of the characters that you depicted there, the judge, in his one of his letters to the character on the left, the aesthete who's got this aesthetic life, considers different aesthetic media and how you could depict a life. And so he considers painting and music, theater and poetry, and he says that the medium of painting is space, two-dimensional space, where statue is three-dimensional space, music, the medium is time, and then he's considering living a human life that is, so I guess I'd like to hear you reflect on how do you capture in the medium of two-dimensional space ideas that are expressed in the most common philosophical medium of the printed word, which is also an effort to reflect on the medium of human existence, which is not constrained to space or time. Yeah.
So, when I view philosophy and when I view art, I view them. I view them on a spectrum of visibility. I believe that in all disciplines that we study, philosophy would be at the far invisible end, and art would be at the far visible end, because philosophy is all about ideas, while art is all about actually creating things. But when I do my practice, I think about closing the spectrum and turning it into a circle so that the two ends meet. So that's the basic idea that I have when I read philosophical texts. And I believe that philosophy is about putting the formless into words, and by depicting them in art, I am putting it back into the formless. So it's like a process that I go through. And the drawings are I'd say that they're very intuitive. When I read a piece of text, this may sound really crazy, but I see things, and I see visual forms, and then I make sketches, and then I put them on canvas. So I guess I channel with the authors, and I try to imagine what the form they put into words would look like if they were in a visual form. So that would be my creative process. Thanks for asking.
Well, thank you so much.
Sorry. And just a little quick announcement. I very thankfully received quite a few requests on purchasing prints or actual works or commissions. The forms are down there. Please complete it and put it in the blue folder if you'd like to purchase any of the artworks that are in the show. And the postcards over here are for you to take. And there's an interactive piece on the way out there where you can draw your own eternal self. So please enjoy. And again, thank you so much for hosting this show, Professor Copenhaver.
Thank you so much, Becky, for sharing your work with us.
Yeah. And thank you so much for coming.
Okay. Please enjoy food and refreshments out in the foyer, and take a look at the catalog as well.
Oh, yeah.